Now we're going to sew the hem using a zigzag stitch, which will give us some stretch. I like my zigzag set at the widest point and about mid-range for length. Now, don't do what I just did, which is break my needle, because that's no fun. And we're back with a new needle. And now when we get to this crotch part, this is where you want to go slowly. That super curved part of the front crotch has a tendency to bunch up and fold over on itself. Just go slow, flatten it out. Every couple stitches stop, flatten it out again, and you'll do just fine. If your first pair turns out a little funky, I bet your second pair will be perfect. And once you get past that curve, it's smooth sailing from there. If you happen to have a cover stitch machine, you can also cover stitch these hems, because that will allow for enough stretch on your leg holes. But zigzag works just fine. And you can see our finished leg hole here, and you can see that there's a little bunching right there on that curve, but when you actually put the pair on, it'll flatten right out. So pretty much perfect. I mentioned before that you really want to make sure you have all those ruffles laying in one direction when you're pinning and sewing, because they will have a tendency to get caught and pulled backwards, and you don't want that. So one thing you can do to make that a little easier is to baste those ruffles down before you hem the leg hole. And I've done that here with a serger, but you can easily do that with a straight stitch. So here are both leg holes hemmed. And we're ready to sew the side seams up. So fold those together, right sides together, and then we want to line up the hemmed edges of the back and the front. Line them up and pin it together. And again, make sure those ruffles are all laying in the right direction. You can even pin them down if you want, or again, baste them. We're going to pin both sides together. So here's our other side, which we're going to line up and pin. When you're done pinning, sew those babies up. If you've got a serger, use that. If you don't, just use a zigzag stitch, pretty much the same settings as when we hemmed. And there we go. So now we're going to flip these right side out. And there you go. You can see these are very much resembling a pair of legit undies. Now we're going to finish that top edge. I'm going to use some stretch lace, but you can fold it over and hem it, just like you did with the legs. You could finish it with some elastic, or you could even finish it with a contrast band of fabric. And I'm going to use, again, pretty much the same stitch settings that I did for the hemming. I'm going with the widest width and about a medium length. Now if you're going to do a fabric waistband or the stretch lace waistband, you don't really need that full 3/8 to 1/2 inch hem allowance that we had, so you can trim accordingly before you start sewing the waistband. And we're just going to go all the way around, stretching the lace a little bit as we sew. When we get back to a few inches from where we started, I'm going to clip the lace so we have about 1 inch overhang. Fold under the raw edge and overlap it over where we started. And then I'm going to zigzag right to that folded edge of the end of our lace. And when I get right to the end of that, I want to stop with the needle in the down position, and then I'm going to lift the foot and pivot. And then I'm going to sew right up over that fold so it lays flat. Back stitch, and we're done. Here we have our damn near completed pair of underwear with our nice fancy stretch lace waistband. And there's our zigzagged edge, which you can barely see. We did such a fabulous job. So our last finishing touch is going to be a little satin bow. So here I've got my ribbon. And you really just tie a bow, just like tying a pair of shoes. Try to get it as small as possible. You might have to undo it a few times to get it right. And once you've got it, you can pull those edges and even up the loops, and then clip your edge on an angle. That'll keep it from fraying. And then we didn't waste any ribbon by cutting a big piece and trimming it from there. So when I go to sew this on the undies, I've marked the center of the laced waistband with a pin, and then I've got my bow on there. And I'm going to use that widest zigzag again, except this time I want to take the length all the way down to 0, so it's basically not going to be moving at all. We're just going to be doing a zigzag in place, which is called tacking. If you want to make extra certain your bow is on there good, stitch a few times, put the length up a little bit so the needle moves forward, and then put it back to 0 and tack again. And if you use matching thread for this, you will barely be able to see that tack on the ribbon. And here's a close-up so you can see how well the tacking really does blend in with the ribbon. It blends in so well, I thought it would be a good idea to make a little diagram so you can really see where that stitching should go. And now we get to admire our handiwork. There's the front, the little bow, and the back. Super cute. These would make a great shower gift if you know someone that's getting married. They are also perfect, I think, for wearing under short skirts, sort of like a pair of little bloomers. And you could make kid sizes to go over diapers. And the best part, of course, is it looks like you spent several hours on all that ruffle detail work. And it'll be our little secret that the fabric came like that. If you have any questions, just leave me a comment. And don't forget to subscribe for more sewing, craft, and DIY tutorials.